And until he went in the ring, no one knows how hard he hits because he wasn't ever sparring with him to know what a monster this guy was. And he took it and drained it out of him and eventually won. And all the greats, and no matter what you do, have that quality, whether it be a lawyer, whether it be an athlete in any sport, whether it be a winner at anything. Here's a man who had everything to lose, and yet he said, I can do it, and he did it. He's just amazing.
Where do you start? It's my first recollection of things that sticks with me. The very first fight with Sonny Liston. And I, grew up in Chicago when I was at this predominantly all-white Catholic school in a little place called Harvey, Illinois. And you gotta remember how divisive this was, because a lot of the old generation black folks, the lineage was Joe Louis and Sonny Liston, And here comes Ali, and it's a social thing too, because Ali, number one, well, he was Cassius Clay then, but there was illuminations, that he was talking about the black Muslims, and there was, Malcolm X. So a lot of older black people, my father included, were kind of like, there were a lot of white folks who were freaked out by it, but there were a lot of black folks who were freaked out too, because, they were like, wow, I don't know about this guy. He's talking about white people, blue-eyed devils, black, rock and gold, I don't know, like, is it going to be the gangster Liston or Ali? Well, maybe the gangster Liston, because this guy, So my father and I were just, had this, leading up to the fight, this debate. And so I remember the night it was on radio. So the night of the fight, I'm like, I got getting ready for this, this fight. So my father, he puts on his coat and gets ready to go out. I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going out to catch Clay. Because that was the idea that Liston was going to just like punish this guy. And so I thought it was like very funny. So of course, the way the fight turned out, it was just completely stunning. And I remember it was the first time I became aware of talking a lot of shit. I started talking trash that night at the house. Because I still remember I'm the only black kid, and there were two of us, and I just came back, and everybody was sick, because they didn't talk about Clay, it was none of this, and I came back. So that was my first experience of what we call parasitic triumph. That I was just so happy, so pleased, but also just because I he was a voice, he was a spirit of young people. Yes. And not only that, but also, here's a young black man who is proud of being black. And it was a really cool thing. So, so that was sort of began my, like a love of Clay and Ali.
I'm glad you went to Liston's fight, because I was always curious about the second Liston fight. Show.
There's a lot of stories about it, and I don't know the real thing, but supposedly Liston was afraid that if he came out and won, he would be killed. And as a result of it, they say he didn't fight. I don't believe that he didn't get hit. And the thing that is amazing with Ali, whether it was his own fears, because like they said in the movie, but also when they took his blood pressure before the Fraser fight, it was up like this. Whether it's his own way of dealing with it, but he gets in the head of his opponent, and in this case Liston, he says, oh, this guy's crazy. He is just crazy. And all of a sudden, boy, what's going to happen? And if you're paranoid or if you have superstition, don't fight Ali, because he's going to find it and get it and do it. And that was the rumors that I've heard inside.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we just kind of move fast forward, talk about memorable moment. So remember, then he changed his name officially, Muhammad Ali. So that created a whole nother thing, Muslims, black Muslims, and all that, and people were just going nuts, about that. And they didn't know that was just the beginning, So I remember it was Ernie Terrell. There's a number of people, Floyd Patterson didn't do it either. Just how Ali just tortured people who did not call him by his name. And we all thought that was just so great. But the signature moment, Ali got like 2 fights in my life, or maybe 3, one more, that didn't count. But so Terrell, but he tortured Patterson. And all the civil rights, black people, you know, oh my God, it's Floyd Patterson. You know, he was just like torturing. So then, because he called him Clay. Then there was Ernie Terrell. So Ernie Terrell, same thing. And that was the What's My Name fight, right? And I remember that became the signature at our block from then probably until it was adult. You would beat somebody, dunk on somebody, you'd like, what's my name? What's my name? You know, I mean, that was like the anthem of humiliation. You know, but it was such a, I don't know if white kids were doing it, I kind of doubt it, but that almost became, you know, because we signified. And that took signifying to a whole nother level. Because part of signifying is humiliating people and then like talking trash, you know. And so that moment with Terrell, and then I guess as you get older, you know, somebody, well, didn't you feel bad about it? Well, no. You know, because he was disrespecting him. So Terrell would say later on, it was all part of the hype. It was all part of the hype of the fight, but and nobody knows how to hype the fight better. Then Ali says, oh, you want to hype it? Well, great. What's my name?
The thing that people may or may not realize or understand, there is a certain depth in this person, whether it be Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, or any of the greats, that can be the nicest people, but there's a certain meanness, there's a certain power, strength that they have, that they summon when they have to in that ring. I mean, talking about when we mentioned a second ago Pacquiao, and I'm glad that fight's finally happening. And a lot of people, you know, say, oh, Floyd doesn't like to get hit. No one likes to get hit. And when he did get hit in a couple of his fights, he showed what he had. But if I don't have to get hit, I know I'm going to be here a lot longer. I'll be able to be speaking clearly. And no reason to get hit if I don't have to, and no one wants to pay for that. But it proved he took over some of the mantle of the talking, and he's the superstar. And it's interesting that's finally happening.
I remember, you know, you mentioned I worked for Ebony magazine. And one of the stories I did 2 stories on George Foreman, and probably 2 of the best stories I wrote for Ebony, because Foreman was a very interesting guy. He's a very interesting guy. And Ali, I was just amazed how, to the extent that Ali had just, I can't curse here, just him up emotionally. Because remember, after Ali beat him in Zaire, which was maybe one of the top 5 fights of all time. So remember, after that, George Foreman fought. Remember, he fought the 5 people in one league. So I go out to Livermore, California, which is where he's living. And so I go up to his place, and he's got this thing that beware of dogs. Well, of course, he goes up there. He's got a lion in his tiger. I was like, yo, if you wear a dog, you got to come lion in his tiger up here. But he was saying, as we started talking about it, Ali, he was saying, you know. I can't remember the whole conversation, but I remember he was talking about his guy was listening. And he said, you know, Ali said, you know, no heavyweight in the history, and no heavyweight in the history of boxing comes out, you know, Sonny Liston came out now, he was knocking you out really quick. So this guy comes out thinking 12 rounds. He comes out thinking 12 rounds. And he was kind of talking to me, but he was really talking to himself. But Ali had just so completely, he was talking about so many different aspects. It was just psychoanalysis. And he said, so why did you fight the 5 guys? Because, you know, he said, I thought something was wrong with me. Because he was so sure. If you know anybody from Texas, they think like that anyway. You know, everybody from Texas thinks like that. You know, but he was just convinced. He was so convinced. That he was more virile, more this. So for Ali to just humiliate him like that, he's going to fight 5 guys. He said, I thought something was physically wrong with me. I thought I was so physically sick. And I think that what happened, because remember after that,
James, what was he fought the other fellow, he lost, and then he went into retirement.
Young.
Jimmy Young.
Jimmy Young. That pushed him over the edge. But I think something also happened with Ali, because remember, Foreman before that played it straight. He played it straight, and you know, Ali was a business. After that fight, he realized Ali had it all figured out. He realized Ali had it, he knew the game, that he had all figured out. That's when he started becoming Big George and George, you know, to grill and he realized Ali, damn, I've been taking this shit serious. Ali had to fight all the time. You know?
It's interesting because you're 100% right. When I had Holyfield, we were in a lawsuit with Foreman. And Foreman and I were pretty close because in an auction one day, I saw two things and I bid on them and won them and gave them to George. One was his draft license, and one was a picture of him when he was 17 or so, sparring with Sonny Liston. And when I gave it to him, he cried and he said, someone stole these from my house, and I never thought I'd see him again. And I gave it to him. Him and I were pretty close. So now we're in a lawsuit, and this is during the grill days with Holyfield. And I said, George, you got your reputation and everything. Why would you want to be in a lawsuit with Holyfield? And pardon my language. He says, I'm the same blah, blah, blah that I was then. I just know how to play it better. And just what you said.
It's just so, it was so remarkable. But he was a very insightful person. And then the next story I did with him later, just prior to Jimmy, where he had found religion. Remember, he went through his whole born-again Christian thing, which was sort of very interesting. It's just a very interesting guy. But again, it's the impact that Ali had on a whole. You know, we're not even talking about the draft and social. We're just talking about on his industry. Just how he completely transformed the industry. It's a fact. When I was looking at this, I'm a sort of anti-MMA kind of person. I'm just thinking, man, where are we going? You know, with this stuff. And I was thinking that, you know, and we could, well, maybe it's another conversation for another night, but MMA will never turn out a person like this. Not even close for a lot of reasons, you know. But you know, that's kind of a random thought. But I was looking at this, I said, you know, there may not ever be a person like this again, but certainly when you look at MMA, because you could tell us more than most. I mean, boxing has turned out a number of socially redemptive type of people. You know, whether it's Joe Louis or Sugar Rush, in his own way. You know, there's something more to it than just fighting and you know, knocking somebody down and then getting on top of them and just pounding and fighting in the ring. There is some ethical, there's some kind of honor to this. I'm happy to see it coming back.
Well, I don't think in 50 years from now you'll see a history of MMA like you do history with boxing or what it stood for. The other thing, if you think in your own life, if you started out young with a goal, whether you said, I'm in 10th grade, 8th grade, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be whatever. Most people don't, I didn't. I found my calling later. But if you knew at that age, this is what I want, and my first goal is to win the Chicago Golden Gloves. My next goal is to win the Olympics. And my goal in life is to be the heavyweight champion of the world. And now you just won it. And then you say, okay, here it is. I'm not going against my beliefs. It's a strength that you can't imagine. And at that time, being young, I didn't understand what he was giving up. I do now. And it's unfathomable. You dream, you just say, okay, I don't believe it's right to go over there. I'm giving that dream up now. and here it is. And remarkable human, just a remarkable human.
Mr. Bill, when you said about boxing coming back, I had a question for Shelly. You made a statement to ESPN Boxing in 2010 when you were making a transition. You said, I still love boxing, but more and more of the politics of it, I don't like.
Well, it's more than politics. If you win the Super Bowl, no one doubts New England is the champion. Here is 5 champions.
So you just should have thrown them back.
You're right. I can't, and to justify it later, that's another story.
Right, that's another
Yeah. Run it 2 more times, then throw it, you know. But,
you know, I'm sorry. They were to say, you know, if we give it to Marshawn, he's going to get the MVP. There's no way that Marshawn Lynch is going to be the MVP of the Super Bowl. That's another story.
oh, so the politics hurts it. While on the other side, what MMA does, they're really a model of WWE, which is the World Wrestling. They put the events live, very little, and then they do the pay-per-view events a couple of times a year. Same model. And they control everything in it. Every fighter is signed to the organization. And look, if that's what someone wants to do, that's okay. I would always rather it be out there and the best man win in the ring. And boxing is in my heart. It will always be there. And now that there's a couple of good fights coming up and a little bit more excitement in the sport, I'm glad, because to me, it's the greatest sport. And people who can't really get into it don't understand. Winky Wright and, he was the champion and he lost. But whatever it was, this fellow is sitting in the row behind me and he's telling his girlfriend, oh God, he's winning, he's winning. I said, next round, do me a favor, watch who's backing up. And he says, oh God, my guy isn't winning. And it's the understanding of really what you're watching and understanding the subtleties that in the later rounds determine who wins or not. And sad to say, we all get older, and at a certain age, Muhammad Ali was the example of it. I believe I could do it, but your body betrays you, and he shouldn't have fought the last 2 fights, because it's not only in the ring you get hit in the gym a lot. You get hit a lot more than in the ring. And even though you have your head guard on, which stops you from getting cut, it doesn't stop you from getting hit. And when you love someone like an Ali, you don't want to see that. And a couple of fights that he didn't have to take after might have been a difference in his life.
You said boxing coming back.
Well,
Shelly, you just mentioned about getting hit in the head, injuries. Right. Boxing coming back. We hear a lot about head injuries in football and even hockey now. But I haven't heard much about head injuries in boxing.
Well, it's an oxymoron. That's
Right.
by definition. Well, I meant,
What the boxing doing about it? Are you doing anything about it?
well, let me back up. Let me answer what I can first, and then we can get to that. So just before I came here, I was telling Shelly, I was doing a podcast with Sugar Ray Leonard over at the CBS studio, and he's going to be the color person. NBC now is going to have this new initiative that's going to begin March 7th or 8th, where NBC, Marv Albert's going to be the play-by-play person, Sugar Ray's going to call, and they're actually going to put boxing back on prime time TV. And they're going to have a lot of young people, because people haven't stopped boxing. They just haven't been getting the exposure. And as we talked a lot about that, so I like that. And you know, boxing, unlike MMA, which I think is sort of almost a middle class, you know, boxing is still a poor person sport for the most part. MMA, for the most part, you still got to do lessons. You got to take taekwondo and jiu-jitsu, which is not free. And it's sort of a upper middle class sport, which kind of gets into a whole other thing about who, you know, always trying to invent a hero or something, you know. But so boxing, so I like the idea of opportunity. Now, I think they're going to start with a whole battery of tests. They're going to probably take, boxers and establish a baseline of where they are. And at a certain point of fighting when you need to stop. But here's the story. You mentioned football, because there's a lot of hand-wringing about football and about the stuff. Listen, it is what it is. Football and boxing they are tough sports. They're tough sports, which is why, many are called few and chosen. It's just a tough sport that a lot of people watch. I cover it and all that. And I think that no matter what you do, and Shelly, you can talk to this boy, I don't know how much you can do except like the NFL, make sure that you take care of people. You're making billions of dollars. Just make sure you take care of people on the back end. When people volunteer to do this stuff, you do as much as you can, don't let them fight as much or whatever. But once you volunteer to do this, knowing that it's almost 100% injury sport, and make sure that if you develop dementia or that there are things in place to take care of. Take care of your own. Take care of your people. Just don't use them up and throw them away. But the sport itself is what it is. And that's why people pay to see it.